And with that wake-up call video, which we were able to put together with our friends from Alstom and the UITP, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening, or good day, whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are in the world, because this is not something which is just going to be physically in this room, but online as well. And welcome to all of those around the world who are joining us in that way. This event celebrating the fact that despite the current problems, we are able to come together here in the room and with some 500 people altogether around the world online. My name's Simon Fletcher, Director Europe here at the UIC, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for the next 2 days. We have a very intense program. We have a wide and impressive range of speakers, and all to this audience of you here in the room and all of those around the world. Masks need to be worn, please, when you are seated in the room. If you're on stage speaking later on, and of course when you're drinking a coffee or something like that outside, then of course the masks can be removed. And please put your mobile telephone or any other instrument you may have into silent mode. There will be a penalty for anybody in this room whose phone goes off. As we start to see the green shoots now, ladies and gentlemen, of recovery from the pandemic, even if we might be having a little bit of a blip at the moment, and as we enter the UIC's centenary year, we will explore the services that need to be in place for our customers, because there's no other point doing this if we don't have customers, how those will evolve in the next decade, and what can we look forward to as we strive to win the race to zero carbon and achieve a renewables revolution. Over the next 2 days, we will we'll work in a range of languages, as befits an international organisation. Here in the room, it will be English or French. When you need to use a headset, please select the language using either channel 1 or channel 2. You can see on the screen, on the board, just on my left for you, my right. And it will be, so we will either be in English or French, but around the world we will also hear people speaking in Turkish, Chinese, Russian. And kicking us off, we welcome our President, Krzysztof Mamiński, who is the CEO of PKP, who will be joining us online. He will speak in Polish, and so right now, your first task is to, unless of course you happen to speak Polish, like our friends over here, you will need to put your headsets on and switch to the channel of your choice. So hopefully, any second now, Krzysztof Mamiński is going to pop up on the screen, and we welcome him to address us as part of the opening of this event.
Szanowni Państwo,
ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be able to welcome you in my new role as the UIC chairman. I'd like to welcome cordially Mr. Walter Goetz, head of cabinet of the European Commissioner for Transport, Adina, as well as representatives of politics, industry organizations, and the railway industry. I am privileged enough to be able to speak before you during the UIC Symposium, and I'm delighted to be able to open, together with Mr. Director Davenne, this very important event. As you probably know, 2022 is going to mark the celebrations of the UIC 100th Jubilee. Today's symposium marks the beginning of these celebrations. Therefore, it is my great pleasure to take part in such an important event, bonding together representatives of railway and the public life. I am very glad to be able to talk over such an important matter as the future of railways. We know railway demands vision, to be realistic, to be backed by the instruments to its efficient and effective implementation. Vision of railways growth for 2030 is a real document but also is a very ambitious document. And this is the kind of level of ambition that we urge you to achieve at the global level. And this appeal goes to the world of politics, social organizations, and economic organizations. We know that the railway transportation, has very ambitious goals to achieve, especially in the area of climate change. This can happen through efficient climate transformation within decarbonization and the digitization of transportation services. Railway must become a backbone of the future mass mobility. This applies not only to Europe, but to the whole world. And I urge you all to make this vision happen. We must do it together because this is only together that we can achieve it. Over the last weeks, I have had bilateral talks with the chairs of the respective UIC regions of North America, Africa, Asia, and Pacific. All these continents, as is Europe, are characterized by a huge level of determination to further investment in railways. This is very uplifting. UIC, as the organization, is as determined to commit in interregional projects in cooperation with its members, with aim to deliver instruments to boost interoperability and technical advancement of the railways. As UIC chairman, I have committed to co-act with our members in Europe and beyond to ensure the railway is going to play a very important role in achieving climate goals. It is obvious railway is the most efficient and the most environmentally friendly form of public transportation. In this decade, the railway transport in the European Union has to increase by 50%, whereas the fast-speed railway share has to double. These are good solutions, these are good assumptions, but we need a lot of effort to be put for these assumptions to be made real. We need to have commitment on the part of railway organizations, but also on the part of member states, institutions, in the worlds of politics and finance. I'd like to stay optimist as I see more and more people, representatives of in the worlds of economy, politics, and social and society, and they have started talking highly about the rail, not only as a very efficient mass public transport means, but also they value the role railway can play to counteract climate change. In order to make us all see the advantages of railways at the political, economic, and social level, we need to implement breakthrough pilot projects and implement innovative technological solutions. We want railway to stay competitive and widely accessible. I'm firmly convinced that the railway has to and will play a very important role in the entire value chain and in freight passenger transport. I am deeply convinced that UIC will play an ever greater role in the promotion of innovative solutions for railway with the sake of having modal shift implemented. This meeting is a very good opportunity to carry on discussion on the vision for railways, developed together by the members of UIC from Europe, Asia and Pacific, North America, Latin America, Africa, and Middle East. Document entitled Vision 2030 Design a Better Future has a truly global character. This document is a vital inspiration to carry on dialogue about the future of railway, and it was so at the last COP26 conference. And I believe this is going to be the case also in this two-day event. I do hope that so many representatives of the railway and public transportation sectors are going to be the part of the creation of the railway of the future. Irrespective of where we come from in geographical terms, we need a sustainable mobility system. I do wish you inspiring discussions, very fruitful debates, and initiatives contributing to positive transition. Many thanks indeed for your attention, and I'm handing over to Director Davenne.
So, a virtual round of applause for Krzysztof Mamiński. And our apologies, of course, for the problems with the sound. I'm sure that won't repeat itself, nor need hopefully the vision either, the slight flickering of the vision. But we will have other opportunities to test whether that will be a problem or not, because many of the speakers will be online. But physically present in this room and able to address us personally is François Davenne, who is the Chief Executive here at the UIC, or to give him his proper title, the Director General. And he is going to tell us a little more about setting the scene for this event. François, the floor is yours.
Bien, merci Simon, mesdames et messieurs, monsieur le président Mamiński, monsieur Goetz, représentant de madame Vălean, chers invités. Donc je fais une petite introduction en français parce qu'après tout nous sommes en France et je vais repartir en anglais juste après pour l'enregistrement de l'événement. I wanted here to insist after Chairman Mamiński on the practical aspect. Because UIC is a practical organization. We are delivering operational solutions in 1922. And starting 2022, we are really entering into a pivotal time for UIC. We are also entering, as Chairman Mamiński said, in a pivotal period for basically the climate and the evolution of our transport system. Well, we have all read the IPCC report, and we know that, it's obviously something very important to have a planning until 2050. But what is important is what we will be able to deliver by 2030. And I think that's definitely what we are trying to demonstrate here. What are the practical tools? What can we do very practically and very concretely to cope with climate change? Well, we have been advocating in the COP26 modal shift, and it's in the European New Green Deal to double freight and passenger traffic by 2030. Well, for passenger, it's high-speed traffic, but obviously you cannot double high-speed traffic if you don't double the other traffic, because in a way, high speed is the backbone of the backbone. So we need to increase the traffic everywhere. But for that, we definitely need to do our homework. So in my speech, I will try to say that there is quite a few good news for the sector. We have a momentum, but there is also a lot of things to do, and I hope that we will be able to deliver. First of all, Chairman Mamiński referred to the Vision 2030. I should say that the Vision 2030, when we initiated it, was some kind of gamble, because we had to deliver a roadmap for decarbonation. And we launched a task force, and the very big surprise is we ended up with a single document, because every member was involved. We had India, we had China, we had Middle East, we had Africa. So it's really a global document. And when you read it, and what has also surprised UIC first, is it's a very consistent document. That means that our members are on the same page, and I think you will register that during this day. Well, there is basically 4 themes, transforming city and connecting community. So during the presentation, you will see practical solution about that. There is a question of innovation, energy, technology, and what is to be done in the very short term. Intermodality, how we install intermodality and seamless connection. And at the end of the day, how do we transform customer experience? So we have the vision, and now we have to deliver. And I think what will be the output of this symposium is a manifesto when we will try to see what could be the short-term innovation that will make all of that possible. Well, there is a few that are very important. For example, ATO, automated train operation. That's an innovation that will need to spread all over the network, but the good news, that's already existing. We have ATO experimentation in Europe, we have ATO operational in China, so it's definitely possible. There is multimodality. Multimodality has to be improved, but we have some experiences in some countries where it's very mature. For example, in Switzerland or Austria, we have already systems that are interconnecting from aviation to public transport in a very seamless way. So all of that is existing. If we are speaking about modal share of freight, for instance, we have countries, for example, Russia or China, where the modal share of rail freight is above 50%. That's also the case in the US and even in Europe, as far as I remember, in Switzerland or in Austria is above 30%. So it's definitely possible. But what do we need now is really to deliver the tools that will make our fellow citizens aware that they have to change their transport paradigm. We have to make this future desirable. That will be a future with a different transport paradigm. We hope that at the end of the day, we will deliver with railway a true backbone for mobility. To say the truth, today, rail is not the backbone for mobility because globally, the modal share of rail worldwide is 8%. In Europe, it's 9% for passenger and 17%, as far as I remember, for freight. So we are still far away from being an actual backbone, but I think we can achieve it if we work together in a way with the spirit of continuous improvement. So that will be the UIC remit. So all of that is coming a little bit in the same time. That will be our centenary. So we will have to draw the line of what will be the future of UIC. And that will be my conclusion. The future of UIC, from my point of view, and we will see that, I hope, during this day, there are 3 pillars. First one is to have this very clear vision that you have read. We need to have a direction, and this direction is how we decarbonize in the next 30 years. Sorry, in the next 10 years. The second pillar is innovation. We really need to be innovative and to have all our members able to not only innovate, because we all know how to innovate, but innovate in the same time with the same system vision. And there I would like to pay tribute to the new Europe's Rail joint undertaking and what the Commission has done. We have now, at the European level, a system pillar. In UIC, the technical department is called the system department, and I think that this system vision will be very important, obviously in Europe, but worldwide. And what is perhaps, from my point of view, the most important, because it's really where we will success or fail, that are we able to continuously improve the service? And that will be the third pillar, and UIC is about operation. We are the association of the worldwide operators from, infrastructure manager, operator, wagon keeper, and so on. How we improve continuously the service to make indeed desirable for our fellow citizens to enter into a decade where, at the end of the day, a rail will be actually the backbone of mobility, and that will be something that our customer and our fellow citizen will hopefully enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, François. And by the way, the document that Krzysztof Mamiński and indeed François mentioned is this one here. This is the vision document, the Vision of Rail 2030, Design a Better Future, and they're available outside. So when we eventually go for the coffee break, don't forget to grab a copy of the document, and then you can inwardly digest it. So moving us now to our next little session, still continuing with the theme of scene setting, I'd like to welcome three guests now who are going to respond to the question of what kind of world do we live in and what are we doing to improve it. First of all, excuse me, I'd like to welcome Andrei Dzikus, who's the chief of the basic services, urban basic services section at UN Habitat, who will be joining us online. And then here in the room, we will also welcome Walter Goetz, who is the head of cabinet for Commissioner Vălean at the European Commission, who regrettably at the last moment was unable to join us, but we're delighted that Walter could be here. And also from SNCF, of course, the homeboys here in France, the local operator, Mikael Lemarchand, who is representing today Jean-Pierre Farandou from SNCF. So first we move across to Andrei Dzikus, who will address us online. Again, hopefully we will pick up the sound this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, distinguished participants, excellencies, all protocols observed. I'm delighted to speak to you from Nairobi, Kenya, which is the world headquarters of the United Nations Human Settlements Program, in short, UN Habitat. And UN Habitat is the UN agency which deals with cities and human settlements globally. And our mandate also focuses on transportation within cities, but also amongst cities. So may I begin by remarking that the achievement of all sustainable development goals is critically dependent on better transport, both within cities and also between cities and countries. The way cities plan and manage their growth, ensuring mobility and accessibility for people, and the movement of goods will determine their prospects of growth and prosperity. In a rapidly urbanizing world, cities are faced with a rapid increase in transport demand. The provision of transport infrastructure and services often cannot keep pace with the rapid population growth. Policymakers often respond with big investments for large-scale transport infrastructure. However, investments in infrastructure such as flyovers and tunnels serve the ever-increasing numbers of private cars and attract even more vehicles to our streets. On the other hand, investments in infrastructure for walking and cycling are the modernization of public transport are lacking. Even though these modes account for the majority of trips in cities, especially in developing countries. So how can urbanization be made more sustainable? And what role can public transport and railways play towards this goal? I would like to offer some reflections. Relative to other modes, rail offers a carbon-efficient means of movement of people and goods and is highly beneficial for long-distance regional connectivity. Usually, the higher costs associated with metropolitan railway may make other modes more affordable, particularly for smaller and medium-sized cities. The choice for most of the suitable public transport systems will have to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. But rail can indeed play a pivotal role in connecting different cities and thereby make cities and entire regions economically more vibrant. Rail systems have a high load carrying capacity and can help reduce road congestion and road wear and tear. Being a highly energy efficient mode, rail has great potential for decarbonizing both passenger and freight transport, and therefore can help achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius stabilization pathway agreed upon in the Paris Agreement. In cities, rail and road transport should complement each other and not compete. This will ensure the last mile connectivity for both people and goods. There is need for integration between regional connections and various modes of transport within cities, including good public transport and non-motorized transport options. Many cities in the world are known for their iconic railway stations, which are often in a central position in the city. Railway stations can indeed be hubs for business and social activities, which can boost the economy of cities. Stations should also be designed with the objective of good intermodal connectivity. For example, with adequate provision for parking bays for city buses and with bike sharing hubs. By including electric charging infrastructure for vehicles, railway stations can also promote the uptake of electric mobility. The stations should also be linked through public transport connections with other key points of interest within the city. Furthermore, it's important that such stations and the entire transport system are designed with the needs of women, people with disability, and other vulnerable groups in mind. Considering universal design features for transport systems, stations as well as surrounding streets is a key ingredient to make the services accessible for all. It is my hope, particularly in the COVID-19 recovery, that public transport will gain the recognition it deserves. Countries and cities will have to direct more investments into rail and bus based on public transport systems and possibly identify ways to cross-subsidize them from car use, such as from parking and fuel taxation. From UN Habitat, we look forward to work with UIC in promoting low carbon and affordable transport and continue to facilitate partnerships between governments, transport providers, and operators. Towards this objective, in June next year, the World Urban Forum will be held in Katowice in Poland. UN Habitat plans to highlight exemplary actions by governments and other stakeholders that address accessibility, climate change, and road safety. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I come to the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed for that important message from a representative of the community which we are here to serve, of course, as the railways. With an overview now of how the European Union is setting out its perspective on these topics, I'd like to introduce, welcome Walter Goetz onto the stage, who will give us the perspective from the European Commission's point of view.
Dear Mr. Fletcher, Chairman, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here to this UIC conference opening this morning. Unfortunately, Commissioner Vălean, who wanted to be here, regrets that she cannot be here, but she asked me to say a few words on her behalf. It is very timely, this conference, and we are very grateful that you have chosen the European Year of Rail as the context of organizing your UIC conference. It is not only today the European Year of Rail this year, it's also a nice coincidence that it's actually today when the Europe's rail joint undertaking legal base has been published in the official journal of the European Union. So Carlo Borghini, who sits in the first row, has now a legal base and a legal mandate to continue his work in innovating railways. That's a good coincidence for this conference this morning. Let me start by reminding ourselves why we want to encourage more people and businesses to choose rail. It fits well with your question of today, what kind of world are we living in and what are we doing to improve it? As you're aware, on the one hand, we see in the European Union an unprecedented level of connectivity for our citizens and our companies. We have never had in history such an availability and affordability of all modes of transport. If it's not there, we could watch it during the COVID-19 crisis when we had lockdowns and cross-border restrictions. That has given a flavor of where we are if we had to reduce our connectivity. So the objective of the European Commission is not to reduce connectivity, but to make it greener and cleaner in the future, because we all know that transport is, unfortunately, when it comes to our Green Deal objectives, still heavily based on fossil fuels and far away from a true decarbonization path as we have in other sectors, like, for instance, in the energy production or in some industry sectors. So what are we doing at the European Union level when it comes to rail? We have our Green Deal agenda. Commissioner Vălean has presented a year ago our strategy on smart and sustainable mobility, which includes quite some significant targets for rail in order to finally get to the modal shift which we all need in the railway system. As you're all aware, we have noted down in our strategy that we want to double high-speed rail by 2030. We want to make all scheduled collective travel of under 500 kilometers carbon neutral within the EU by 2030. And we want to increase the rail freight share by 50% by 2030. These targets have already been mentioned this morning. It's not that easy to achieve these targets. This is highly ambitious because the European Commission works since now decades almost, at least heavily in the last 10 years, since the last mobility strategy, the White Book 10 years ago, on the modal shift. But as it was already said this morning, the share of passengers transport and the share of rail freight is still below what we wanted to achieve already years ago. So what makes it different this time now? I think we have a new momentum now with the Green Deal in the European level. We have now a clearer commitment to decarbonize all sectors with clear pathways towards 2030 and 2050. In that sense, I think we have a political momentum which we haven't had before. But of course, we have now also the perspectives of going massively in innovation and digitalization, which I think is very important when it comes to rail and also intermodality, that we use now the opportunities of ERTMS, for instance, in the railway system, digital coupling, but also a better connectivity of the intermodal services. We need rail in all aspects, long-distance rail, where we have very good examples in Europe, in France and in Germany, and particularly in Spain, to name a few. But some member states, historically and economically, are lagging behind. So we are also in the European Union not yet there to have an integrated railway system at European scale. Although I should say, from the legal point of view, with the fourth railway package, we have opened up markets. The legal basis is there. Companies can provide services across the border, and also domestic services in other countries. So the legal setting is there, but the technical provisions and the let's say the practical implementation of our integrated railway system is still a challenge. What are we doing now at European level, as you asked, Mr. Fletcher? We will present in just 2 weeks from now, on the 14th of December, our efficient and green mobility package. Part of it will be, of course, a revision of the TEN-T network regulation, which is important for the infrastructure and investments. We will look into the rail freight corridors, alignment with the TEN-Ts. That's also important. But for you here, I think the most important document which we'll adopt on 14th of December is our action plan to boost long-distance and cross-border passenger rail. This action plan, which is in the final stages of preparations at EU level, will include actions on integrated ticketing, timetable management, technical interoperability and digitalization, capacity management, rolling stock availability, and train drivers and train staff training and licensing, to just name a few. All these issues, which we will outline in form of actions in this action plan in 2 weeks' time, draw also on the lessons which we have learned from our Connecting Europe Express under the European Year of Rail, which was running in September and October through 27 countries and in 36 days. I'm grateful for your magazine here, which is out there, which has it on the first page, Connecting Europe Express, which was a sort of a rolling laboratory on seeing how cross-border rail functions or not, how difficult it is to bring a train cross-border in Europe. So with all this, I would say that the European Commission has done its share for the moment when it comes to the legal base. We are coming forward with this action plan. We look forward now also to the implementation of all this through the various bodies and tools which we have. I would say from the investment side, we have now not only the money through our Connecting Europe facility, the CEF, But we have a massive investment plan now also running in the European Union with the Recovery and Resilience Fund, where also many member states have chosen to put money into public transport, urban mobility, and into the railway system. So I'm quite confident to look forward in the next years that we make progress. Because, and then I conclude, if I may, it's somehow easy to set these ambitious targets, and we have now a huge window of opportunity for rail, but we have to deliver now also, because now people are expecting also to deliver on these targets and to see progress. And you all know, you are the railway community, 8 years is not a very long period of time when we come to railway infrastructure and services. Time is running, so we have to do our work now. I would say it's very good to reach out now to UIC today, because we are in the European Commission, of course, have as our target to achieve a truly integrated rail internal market. But rail is global, and with this reach out to UIC today, as I said at the beginning, it is very nice now to also see the global aspect. What are other regions and countries doing in the world? How do they tackle the model shift? What can we learn from each other? Best practices, exchanging, and I think also at a UIC level, technical interoperability and technical work, which is so important. I thank you very much again, very much on behalf of Commissioner Vălean, and I wish you a good discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and a nice segue to the later part of the programme in this event, as we will of course go into understanding a bit more from all of those regions that you just referred to. And by the way, the editor of the magazine that you've just publicised is in the room, so I'm sure he'll be delighted for that little plaudit. Moving on to our final speaker in this little session, Mikael Lemarchand, who is from SNCF. He's got a lovely, great big long title, which I'm sure he will give you an overview of as Director of Societal Commitment and Ecological Transition from SNCF. Michael, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Simon. So it's a horrible title. Let's cut it short in Chief Sustainability Officer, because it's a horrible translation from a horrible French title. This being said, I'm very happy to be with you. Oh yeah, I'll take the face coverings off. Dear Mr. Dzikus, Mr. Goetz, really happy to hear you, this inspiring speech. Mr. Chairman, dear François, dear colleagues from the railways all over the world. I first would like to thank François, Davenne, and the UIC for their kind invitation. Thank you, Master of Ceremony. I am really honored, on behalf of Jean-Pierre Farandou, SNCF Chairman and CEO, to take part to this symposium and in the celebration of the 100 years of existence of our Worldwide Railways organization. UIC is the oldest organization of the sector, and over the years, it has remained unique in the way it brings together railways from all over the world. More than ever, the voice of the railways must be heard, especially in these challenging times, because rail transport has never been so relevant to the society as it is today. The COP26 in Glasgow that we referred to earlier on reminded us that we are now at a turning point if we really want to keep the global warming within the 1.5 Celsius degrees range. Without swift and immediate actions, we will fail. Let's face it, without swift and immediate actions, we will fail. And this would have, as we know, disastrous consequences. And today, I'm sad to share this statement with you, but you are aware, emissions from the transport sector continue to rise. Contrary to the ambitious targets that member states and states altogether have set for themselves, and unlike emissions in other sectors that have initiated real progress. So there is an urgency and there is a momentum. I fully agree with what you said. So when we talk about decarbonizing transport, the media immediately think of hydrogen cars. But climate emergency makes it essential to invest first and foremost on the technological solutions that is available now, that is ready, that is proven, and that is scalable. And the good news is that such a technology exists and it has a name, rail. At global level, transport represents 24% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and rail only 1.3% of those total emissions. In France, if I focus on France, transport represents over 30% of greenhouse emissions, gas emissions, for only 0.3% emissions, and a market share that was referred to roughly about 10%. So it speaks volumes. To reverse transport emissions growth, it is therefore necessary to rapidly increase the volumes of passengers and goods, as François reminded us earlier on, and goods transported by rail all over the world. The modal shift of part of road and air traffic to rail is a tangible solution to rapidly reduce transport emissions. And the European Union, and thank you for that once again, is playing its full part in this collective challenge with an ambitious goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, as we know, and a transport sector that will at the same time have to reduce its emissions by 90%, 90. The European Commission and the Commissioner for Transport have clearly expressed the need to exploit the full potential of rail by committing to doubling its modal share in Europe by 2030 for passengers and by 2050 for goods. This is a strong and new ambition, which we welcome, and the SNCF Group is committed along with all European rail stakeholders to support the European Commission and make this ambition a reality. The fight against climate change requires to reduce the carbon footprint of transport. To implement this ambition, it is necessary to rethink, as François reminded, and shank the functioning of the system, and this is the objective of the 2030 rail vision developed by UIC and its members to support this transition. So where does SNCF stand in all of this scheme? As a state-owned company that carries out public service missions, SNCF is fully in line with the Commission's ambition and UIC's vision. We aim to double the market share of rail in France for freight and passengers by 2030. This is what our chairman and CEO, Mr. Farandou, set to the whole group as a target, to the benefit of the entire ecosystem by making rail the backbone of logistics, chains and mobility. To achieve this, our responsibility is to make rail transport both more efficient and more attractive, not just ask for other funding, but this is the politicians and politics mission, but we have to make it more attractive and more efficient. More attractive through better intermodality. I won't dwell too much on it because we know that, but maybe a few figures as far as France is concerned. 70% of the population live within a 5-kilometer range around a railway station, and it raises to 90% of the population when it goes to a perimeter of 10 kilometers around a railway station. This means that intermodality is not out of reach. It is something that we can tap into, that we can grasp, provided that we build the right infrastructures, be it in station or on roads, so that it is easier for the wider population to get access to the railway infrastructures and stations and services, and including deploying bicycle parking. There is a huge plan at SNCF on this. For freight, this is the same with the national strategy that includes improving coordination with ports and inland waterways. And SNCF Réseau, the French infrastructure manager, and Voies Navigables de France have also set up a partnership agreement to develop operational complementarity between rail and inland waterways networks and build low-carbon supply chains. And it is happening now, not in 2035, 40 or 45. This is a good response to what the COP26 stakeholders called upon earlier this month. Thanks to innovation, it was referred to, thanks to investment and employees' engagement, we can make rail more efficient. And SNCF, just to cut it short, SNCF has committed to the shareholder, to the state, to a decrease by 30% of their greenhouse gas emissions in the transport activity by 2030 compared to 2015, and by 50% in the real estate activities. I won't dwell on circular economy, but it is part of the journey, and engaging all stakeholders, in particular our suppliers, on this decarbonization path is essential. I will skip that so that I'm not too long. So now, I think we call on the member states to set themselves concrete targets for increasing the share of rail for freight and passengers. And investors, and this is my major point, investors should support those member states massively, as there is no better return on investment for the society than the investment on rail. And this return on investment should be obvious to all investors, to all citizens, to all stakeholders, if we were looking at the right numbers, at the right figures. And this is why internalization of external costs is essential and mandatory if we are serious about environment and society. And the climate package proposed by the European Commission will be the most impactful if it helps take better account of the advantages and disadvantages of each mode of transport, and in particular the impact on climate. And this includes in particular the extension of the EU ETS system to all sectors of transport, in particular road. Otherwise, once again, we won't be looking at the right numbers to make the right decisions. So the challenge of ecological transition is, as we know, an economic and social challenge as well. This is why I often speak of a triple transition challenge. And there won't be any lonely winner in this transition. So the railway sector is ready to do its part to succeed together in this ecological transition that we urgently need. And SNCF Group is really proud to be part of UIC alongside with all of you members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. That brings us to the conclusion of our first little session. We are a little bit over time, unfortunately, but like all good railway people, we're going to try and make that up. So now is the time to have a brief break. There is coffee outside, but please try and be back just before 10 o'clock, because we've got literally about 5 or 6 minutes to go and grab a coffee and be back, please, so that we can try and pick up. At the same time, while you're grabbing your coffee, have a look at the stands outside. We're delighted to have got our platinum sponsor, whose name I can't pronounce. It's Umawea, I think it pronounced. I'm sure they'll tell you. And they have a little stand outside as well. Thank you.